Yeah, so okay. So now we have our we are trying to just design a simple landing page, right? So we have our boilerplate, we have our body. So what are we going to write? We link it to our CSS, which is this one, and then it is working correctly. So now let's look at the design. We can look at something like this. I wanted to look at maybe something different, which looks simpler. You understand? But this one also looks simple, right? So right? So let's try. I don't know which one to use. Okay, let's just try our own. So because I don't want to just follow something that will be difficult for you. So let's just do our best. What is here? In this, you see we have this is called the nav bar, right? Or the header, right?
Mm,
So this
yeah.
is the header. And when you come to this, also, this is the header, right? So let's design our own header, right? So inside this, we have different elements. So we look at what do we need to have a header. And I told you that when you want your website to be responsive, to be this thing accessible, we use what semantic element, right? So instead of using the div, we can just say header, right? We use header elements because we need what header, right?
Mm,
Mm-hmm. So first of all, let me also try and remove this because normally people tend to write it, but then okay, let's just continue for now. Header. So inside this is our header element. Whatever I write, it will appear here. But we want something different to be inside this what header, which is what we want like this or this, right? So we have one here. We have two elements that we can add, this and that, right? And here we have this and we have this and we have this. We have also this. So it depends on which one or depend on how you want it to look, right? So if we want to design our own, we can also just say we want maybe either what, three column just on one row, right? So this is maybe we can
mm,
say this is our what, our main what container, which is the header, right?
mm,
This is the header. This is our main, or you can put something inside and say we want inside the header. We don't want the header to take anything, but inside it we should have what, maybe a div, right? Because since you already mentioned header is a semantic element. So even if someone who is what, who is disabled or visually impaired is using it, it will take him to the header. So whatever it's inside the header doesn't matter. But the first element should be what, semantic, which is the header, right? So we consider, oh, what do we need to be inside the header? Do you want to bring another parent element and bring the children, or we just want the header to be the parent element? So it is up to you to decide. You understand? So looking at this one, you can look at this and say, oh, this one is simple. So we can just make it, let the header be the parent. So we have only two. Then you can say, we want to add this as our logo, this as our logo. And if you don't have a logo, we want to use text as our logo, we can also use that. So here we can just say we want to use what, H1 to be as our logo. In the name of our logo, we can just put any name or business name. So here they wrote Clemo, but ours we can write different name. Maybe I can just write C4 design as my logo, right?
yeah.
Then I can come down and then I can bring what? So this what is the first what element that I add. So like this, right? So now we need this. Remember this one, they are like a link, right? They are links. But if you add a link and we say we are just adding link, we are adding a just like that, For instance, if I say home, if I add another link and say what about, you see like about, you see how it is going in horizontal way, right?
Yeah.
So I can just use the same thing as link, but because I want to group them in one word, in one container, because this our logo is what is inside the header parent, to the header is the parent, right? So now it means that this one is inside this. But if I want all the other one, the links to be inside its own parent, I can say I want to use a semantic element, which is nav. It is also a semantic element. Then inside this now, I can now bring all my links, right? So I can just write E as my first link, and I can write the name and say about us, right? Services. We'll come down and say I want to add another like 4 of them, right? So I have 4 of them. This is works, blogs, contact. So this is what we can say this is services, right? The third one is what? Works. The fourth one is blogs and contacts. So instead of blog, you can just leave the blogs and just write contacts. So we just need 4, right? You can decide to write all of them, but let's leave it as 4 to make it simple, right? But normally it should just be bigger capital letters, new services, and then works, and then the contacts, right? So you have our links and you have, so now you see that what do you have? This is the parent, the header is the parent, right?
Mm.
So inside the parent, we have 2 elements. This now our logo as H1, and then we have the second element, which is nav, right? So here inside the header, we have we have 2 elements, right? So then inside the nav, we have also 4 elements. You understand? So because this one is normally looking at like a block, right? Each one is a block element, right? And nav 2 is a block element. But the inside one, the links are what inline elements, right? So now it is up to us to achieve this kind of way or layout, right? So now we are just building header. Understand? Our aim is to first build the header. So we are building it section by section. So after we build this, we come and build this, and we go and build this. So it's like I'm building it going down, right?
Mm.
Okay. So now we have built our own header. So this is our header. We finished with the header. So now what do we need? We need CSS to make it look nicer like this, right? Because HTML is for structure, right?
Yeah.
And then CSS is the one we use to beautify the structure, right? So now since we finished with our HTML, we now move to our CSS because we are moving step as one by one. Right? You understand? Step at one step. So we here, if you can bring a comment, you can come here because this is your header, right? They can bring your comment here and say header, right? And then you can comment it. This is a header. So now when you go to your CSS, you can go to your CSS and say, also give a comment and say header, right? So that we can just directly know that, oh, this CSS is for this header.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So that's why these comments are important. When you add it, this header, whatever you are going to the inside the CSS, you go and see similar things and say, oh, header. So this CSS that we are going to write, it's only for this header. You understand? So that's normally why the comment is very important. So now we look at what do we add here, or how can we target there? How can we apply the CSS? To apply, here we target the parents, right? Because we want to achieve something like this, right? We want to achieve something like this. First of all, we achieve these two things. How can we arrange this to be here and this to be here? We have something we call, because we are dealing with responsive design, we have something we are doing, if you can remember, we said Flexbox. We did grid and then flex, right?
Yeah.
So this is where the property comes in. What you've learned, you have to think about it. Remember that, oh, we did this, so how we can use it to make it what? Center, and all those separate. One should come here and the other should be here, right? So first of all, what we normally do is we normally target the parents, which is a container here. Or if you want to call it, you can just add a class and call it container, right? Or you can just leave it as it is. If you don't want to use a class, you can leave it as it is. If you think that you will not use any header inside this page again, you can just leave it as header. So you target this header, go to this header element and write header. Because it is an element, we don't add any dot or hash, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if it were to be a class, if we added a class here, let me say maybe container. Now, when we are targeting this, we just copy the container and come here and say dot what? Dot container, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
is you have an option to do whichever you want it. But normally, in order for us or for a good web design, it is better to name what? The elements and give it a class or an ID.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? So that later on, when you want to add another header, when later on we come down here and say we want to add header, another header. This header will also have its own one class,
Mm-hmm.
right? So instead of this container, you can say this one is container one. You come here and you say container two, right?
Yeah.
So now you see that you are using the same semantic element, but with different class, right? So that if I'm going in my CSS, now I can say this one is container one, and I come down here and say the second one is also what? Container two, right? So you see that they are now different. I can target two of them in different way. But if I go here and didn't use that and I use only header, right? And later on, I want to use the same header again, like here, the CSS that I apply to this header will affect this header. Meanwhile, maybe I don't want the same to have the same CSS.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So that's why you normally see people adding class or ID to those elements. Because sometimes you might say that why, since we have header, why don't you use the header there? I remember later on when you want to use the same header, definitely it will have the same CSS. So that's why we normally use I normally add classes. Understand? So let's see that it's better that let's add our classes. I think let's add a class. So say container, right? So now I'll target my container here. So this one, the container. And then what do we say? We say we use what? Display flex, right? Because now these two things are in block form. Look at
Mm-hmm.
this is the first one. This is the second one. they are all what? In block form, right? But this one is arranged at the top and this one comes down, right? So we want them to spread and become in line, right?
Mm.
You want them to become in line. We can just write what display, right? And we use
Yeah.
inline, right? We can use inline, but then remember we say that using the flex is better, right? Because now if I come here and say I want to use what flex, now I wrote flex, right?
Mm.
I'm targeting this header, container, this is container, right? So I'm targeting container, I write display flex. Now introduce what? This now can move. These two things can now move,
Mm.
right? So what do I need for them to move? We have properties that I told you the last time, right? I told you
Mm.
that we have properties that we can use because we are targeting the container. This is the container, which is the header. And inside the header, we have what? Two elements, H1 and nav, which are inside the
Mm.
two container now. So we want one to be at the left. We want the other to be at the right, right? And then we target the container and we say the container should be flex. Then it is now flex. So what property did we add it so that those who will move?
Justify content.
Justify content, right? We justify content which move them horizontally, right? And then we look at which best value are we using now? Because now we are not looking at both of them to be in the center. We are looking at both of them to separate and one to go to left, one to go to right. So you look at all these values and tell me which value do you think when I use one of them will go left and the other one will go right.
Space between.
Space between, right? Because space between will give a big space inside them and then we'll let one go left and one go right, right?
Mm.
With space between. Okay, let me see. 1 minute. Let me see if I've been making a mistake somewhere. Let me see. Mhm. Okay, it's like I made a mistake somewhere. What? Well, sometimes if you don't check it, let me check if distance is working well. Mhm. Okay, it's working. So what is the problem? With that container. Let me see, maybe I make mistake. Container. Ah, okay, maybe I made mistake, spelling mistake. Okay, so you see now, this one stay here and the other one what move there, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we create justify content space between. But there is another one too, because this one only works horizontally, right? There's another one which works vertically, right? Because we want them to center. Here it's centered, or it is what? It normally moves horizontally when you're using your justify content, right? So now we want them to also, these two things, to also be in the same line, to be in the center, in the same line. Because when you look at this one is here, right?
Yeah.
But this one too is above here. So it's not aligned in the same line together. So we want them to do that vertically. So what was the property, if you remember?
Align content. Content.
Hmm?
Align content.
Think
Align.
about it.
Align item.
Line items. Remember, you normally use align justify content and align items to center it. So always think about it. So now what do we need for this to come in the middle?
Center.
Vertically. Now you're thinking vertically. So if I say center, you see that this one and this one now, they are all in the same line, but vertically. So horizontally, we use what? Space between, which is this space between. And then vertically, we use what? Center. So you see that they are all what? In the center, right? So no matter how I stretch it, they are all same in the center. So it means that we are able to achieve something like this, right? So what left? Now, you see that we have what? Gap here. We also have gap here, right?
Yeah.
So since we are still looking at the container, we're telling the container, we want the container to what? To have something here and something here, which we want it to equal. So what do you think we should add?
Mm,
What property do you think we should add to achieve this? Look at here is empty and here is also empty, right?
mm. Margin. Oh.
Yeah, so we can add margin. So remember, when we add margin, it means that, look at what you're saying. When you say margin, when we add margin to the container, it means that the container will leave its position to squeeze this one. You understand? Because margin is like this one, there is no empty space, right? So when you add margin, you're saying that this one should move. So let me let you get it clearly. So assuming if I'm going to copy this and open it inside the browser, I just want you to see something. So now this is what we have, right? So look at, I have this thing that I use, I call is an extension. We call it what? Pesticide, right? It normally what give you a line or colors to where you see your design, how it what looks like. So let me put it there and then you can see it. So if I click on it, you see our design, right? You see how our
Yes.
design looks like. Hmm?
How did you achieve this? I did not.
No, no, no. It's an extension. It's a Google Chrome extension.
Yes. Yes.
It is called pesticide. You understand? When I want to look at my design, what I'm doing, so I can trace. So if I click here, you see that this is the structure that we have.
Mm,
You understand? So this is the container, the line that you see here. You are seeing that line, right?
mm,
So that line is the local. So let me just make sure that let me give it a border so that you can see it clearly. If I say border, say maybe 2 pixels solid, and I say it maybe let me make it blue so that you see it clearly. So you see the border. When I come here, you see the border. So this is for the border for the container, right?
yeah.
Even though we don't want this border, but in order for us to locate where our elements are seated, we can put the
Mm,
border so that later we can remove it. It's just a guidance. So instead of bringing that border, writing this border, that is why you can. It is also why you can also download this extension and use it. So when I click on it, you see that line. You see the
mm,
line. So if I don't want to be adding borders, I can just remove this and use that my extension so that it will help me to know exactly where I am. You see, right? So now you can look at now what do we need here? If you say margin, it means that you are pushing this, removing this one will push here, this one will push here. So how many margin do you think we should add? Looking at these things.
mm.
So how many margin? So I see margin. So margin, if I say margin, so in this case, look at again. In this case, our aim is what? We want margin, right?
Yeah.
Right? So which margin do
Yeah.
we need in this case? Do we need top margin and bottom margin, or we just need left and right margin? We have to think about
Left
it.
and right.
Left and right. Because if you look at, we already have some margin here and some margin here, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Ah, right. With respect to the container, we can say we have padding because since it is inside, we are looking at the word padding. You understand? Because we are
Yeah.
inside, we are not outside the box. So that's why it's padding, right?
Mm.
So now, if you are saying margin, it means that when you add margin, let me add margin for you to see. Because now, if you are saying margin, it means that we are going outside the box and reduce this to here. We are going outside this and reduce it to here. So let's see, we are adding what? Margin of what? Let's make it simple. So we can, for you to see margin left. So I see 5%, right? You see margin left 5%, and then margin right also 5%. So this one also move. So let's go and look at our own design. So you see that now we add 5 here, we add 5 here. But you said margin. Okay, so look at my design. So you see my container now. So my
Yeah.
container now is this, so is this, this. This is not part. This is just my container. The one which is sitting in there. This is the container now. Because you added margin, you push them here, and you push this one here. So this is now your container. From this place to this place is now your container.
Mm.
You understand? So whatever you do, whatever design that you are doing, going to do here, it will only remain within here. It cannot go out of this. So you are stuck. You understand? So here we can say that it is better to use padding, right? Maybe even though you might not need that space later, but it is better or nicer to use padding because padding will let your box or your container still remain here, but it will still push this here. You
Mm.
understand? So that you still have some space here. If you want this to move somewhere, you can move it. And if you
Yeah.
want this to also move somewhere, you can move it. But if you add margin, it means that it has already blocked this place. So this one cannot move any further. It can only move inside this. This one can also move inside this. So later when you want to add something here, if you don't think wiser, you might be adding things and it will not be applying. Yeah, and so you might think that maybe why is it not working? That because you added margin which block this place and block this place, this thing cannot go here again. So for instance, if you add inside of margin, which is the inside, so let me use the shortcut, and we see top and down, I want 0, but left and right, I want 5%. So you see we achieve the same thing, but now when I click here, you see that it is now inside.
Mm.
Understand? So it's still left that so our container is still standing its position, but it because the padding is inside, it pushes these things to come inside. So we still have this empty white space that we can still control this, and then we also have same, right? So maybe we can make it maybe 10, right? What do you think? Right? So that here maybe like look similar, right? So we can add 10 to it. So you have 10%, 10%, right? It means that we added this 10%, this 10%. So we have 80%. From here to this place is now 80%, right? So we have achieved something like this. So you see that it is easy. right?
Yeah.
It's easy, and then you didn't even add anything. Look at what you did. You didn't add any more code, just single look at the code that you added. Distance that you already achieved the header, right?
Mm.
So now what left now? The thing that left is this, because you see that they are stuck to each other, right? But in here we have some
Mm.
space in between them. So we look at, so what property are we going to add? So can you tell me what CSS am I going to target and which values am I going to use based on this? The last time I explained this, based on if this one is in the container or you are targeting one of them. So you tell me which one should I target and how should I write it here
You can target the link
as the
since we
E.
are going to affect all of them. So we can
Yeah.
just target the link.
Okay, that's perfect. But remember, when you are designing to also you have to think in the future. So for instance, if I target the A, right? And later on, maybe in a different section, maybe I have different section, and inside the section I want to have A inside. So I write A. Don't you think that the CSS I apply to the A will affect this A?
Yeah, it will affect. Then that time
Uh-huh.
you can change it. You can make
But
it by giving
uh,
it the class or
class, yeah. But
ID.
in order for you not to waste time doing that and later you're going to change that, why don't you just do it here and make sure this one is safe so that when you are doing this, you know that we are free, right?
Mm.
So here, instead of targeting this A, why don't you come here and say, okay, I can give this a class, right?
Mm.
Right? And say
Yeah.
links or maybe nav links, right? Maybe nav links. So it means that these nav links affect all whatever it is inside it. You
Mm.
understand? So you have
Yeah.
options, you have many options. You can also decide since it is parent, because nav now is a parent, right?
Mm.
And then you are using what the class as nav links. So now you can even apply the same logic that you did with the header. See. So let's look at it. I come here and say I give what? I target. So now because now this one is a parent now. Here the nav or the nav links now become the parents, right?
Mm.
Okay, as we did with the container. So now we can come here and say we want to have the same effect like this. We can also apply display flex, right? Because it is a container, right?
Yeah.
It is a container. So I can apply display flex, but whatever I do here, it will still remain inside this. It cannot affect outside because I'm not targeting those outside. I'm targeting those inside these things only. So I can apply the same display flex, right? And
Mm.
when I apply the same display flex, now if I'm trying to use just file content or align items, both of them, what do you think should I use here? Don't you think that I can apply just file content? Can apply just file content, right? And then I'll look at this. What should I apply to have space between them? Remember,
Space between.
so what can I do now to have space between them now in this way?
Mm. Space evenly.
Space evenly. You understand? So it means that you are using the same logic here, the one you did with the big container. Now you're applying the same logic to this. So we can say space evenly. So now both of them will have space between them. But the reason why you think it might sometimes not move is because it doesn't have space to move.
Mm.
You understand? Because why is it doing that? When you look at here, and then we come here, you see that even though, look, even though it is what? It is spaced evenly, right? But where can it move? It is already blocked, right?
Mm.
You see that it is blocked here, it is blocked. So it cannot move anywhere, right? So that is the best way you look at it when you use this extension. So now, even though you apply the same thing, but it's still what? Not moving, right? So instead of doing this, you say that no, if I apply this, maybe this one could not work, but it can work if you add maybe the width, right? You can add a weight because now it is stuck. It doesn't know where to go. So if I say weight and then added, let's say I'm adding 200 pixels to it, it start to move. But
Mm.
200 pixels is small. Maybe I can say it 500 pixels. You see it moves
Mm.
because when you added that display flex, it couldn't move because it is stuck in it because it is in container and the container is the nav, this,
Mm.
right? So it is stuck. It doesn't have any weight that. You understand? The reason why you see this header move was because there is a long space, a huge space. That's why it was able to move. This thing was able to move because there is a more space. That's why it was able to move, right? So here, given a weight is not important, right? You don't need to add a weight here because it is the header. And when you look at here, it is bigger, right? Because when you look at this text, it's very small. This one is very small. So it can move around if you see display flex. But if this text was bigger and it's like here and this one is like here, it wouldn't have moved because they have occupied the space unless you give a width that it knows that, oh, it has a bigger width that it can occupy. So that's why we are experiencing here, right? So instead of maybe adding the weight and said maybe you want to give it like 500 pixels, you look at it and say, this one is a long code I'm writing. I understand. You can decide to say, okay, this one is a long code, but then this one too is very well responsive. The responsive that we are talking is when you are trying to shrink it, look at how they are all shrinking together. You understand? So that is what we call responsive. Understand? But then, if you don't want to add any of these, all these things, you can just clear them and say, I just want padding, only padding. That's right, padding to affect what? Not the top and bottom, but left and right. So I can just write 0 in the left and right. Maybe I can add 10 pixels in between them. So you see, we still have a space in between them. Maybe 20, maybe 50. Let's see. Okay. I made an income. Okay, so I have to target this E because what I'm targeting the main container. And if I apply the padding, we are inside the container, it wouldn't work like that. Let me explain it to you very clearly. Here, so you see we have our padding, right?
Mm.
Padding, right? So this is the padding for the container.
Pardon.
Padding for this is for the container, not for the individual link. You understand? So instead of us to do that, we can target the individual link. And as I told you the last time, when you want to target the individual link, you can just give a space and write E. So that E, this E means we are targeting this E. We are inside the now and we're targeting this E because E, they are all what? Equal, right? So you see that it is E, or you can just write it as like this, greater than, and do it like this. They're also the same. So now I'm targeting the E, and now I will just say instead of 50, which is bigger, let's say maybe 10 pixels. You understand now?
Mm.
But the reason why we don't, because we are targeting, we are from the main what? The main, the main parents, and
Mm.
then targeting what? A. So here it is here, like parents target A, and the A is at the same as here, all of them. So it will affect what? All of them, right? And now we don't want what? We don't want the line. What do we need?
Mm.
This property. This property, I think you've just memorized this property.
Text decoration.
There's the creation. There's the creation. And then we set it to what?
None.
None. Right? So you see that now this is gone. Right? So we see that we have achieved something like this, which is similar like this. So we have designed something like this. But then they have this border, you see. So how do we achieve that? Here we already achieved this, but here is bigger and here is bigger. Remember, how can we achieve this? This one is what? Is also what? Because we are not outside the border, we are inside. So it is what? If you can remember, it is for the container. So it means that it is padding, right? Are you there?
Yeah.
It
You
is
say?
padding because here this is one is padding, right?
Mm.
Because here we set padding to be 0, meaning top and down to be 0. So that's why for us, we don't have anything like bigger like this, right? But in order for you to see it clearly, it's better we add background color because there we
Mm.
added some small background color, which is like a beige, right? So we
Mm.
also have to add that same similar color. And we say we want the background color. And then we say maybe we can use beige. You understand? So now you can see clearly,
Mm.
right? So we want to achieve this padding, right? For the container. Because for them, they also have a big, the padding is bigger, right?
Mm.
So you also have to add that. And here, since it is 0, we can change it and say we want our padding to be, let's say, also 10%, right? Let's look at it. Is it looking good? No, we can add more. Maybe you can say to be 20%. Look at it. Or maybe you can go further and say even 30%. You say, okay, now it's okay, right? And now
Mm.
you have achieved something like it. Or maybe, I think it's just like 50%. So you can just make it 50, right?
Yeah.
So you see this line, you see there's a white line here, right?
Mm.
You see that white line. That is normally what we call it is inside the um let me open this for you. Normally you see it here, you see star here, and when you open the DOM, look at this one, look at margin. You see it is 8,
Mm.
right? It is 8 for every what, every position, right? So by default, this is for the browser, the what Microsoft what Chrome browser. It is by default, it is giving you this one. You are not the one who put it there.
Mm.
You understand? So that's why sometimes you see some people who write this something like this. The last time I told you, some people when they are starting to design a website, they will target the what, the main what, selector, which is the star, and they do it like this and say margin to be 0. They put 0 here. So you see that that thing is gone. You understand? Because that one is the default. It comes with the browser. So if you don't put this thing, it will be there. It will up to affect your what your style, your design. But if you don't want it, always you want it to know that, to make sure that whatever margin that you are putting, it is correct. If it is 10, it is 10. So here, if you don't put that and you leave it like that, it means that since here you added margin of what? Maybe you added some margin, that 8 will be part of that margin. You understand? So assuming that here I come here and said I want to add 2 what? Margin 2 pixels. You see that it is 2.
Mm.
You understand? But if you don't want it, always try to make it 0 so that you know that you are perfectly doing, your values are correct. If it's 8, it's 8. If it's 10, it's 10. So similarly, we do the same to padding to make all of them 0. And then, as I told you last time, we do something we call border, the box sizing to border box.
Mm.
Understand? So that everything will be inside this box. Right?
Yeah.
So now when you go to the website, you see that you don't have that white margin there again. You understand? And when you look at here, you see that this margin now is 0. It's not 8 anymore. You understand?
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
padding 2 is 0. You understand? So that is what we've achieved. So you see that it is easier. You manage to achieve something like this, which is easy, right? And then when you look at here, you see there's a line, right?
Yeah.
There's a line. You can also do the same thing. Remember what we did? We did box what? Box, shadow, and text shadow, right?
Yeah.
So this is your what? Container, the header container. We can also add our, because this one is box, because container is a box, right? So we don't see text shadow, but rather box shadow, right? You can see box shadow, and then we, as I told you, we have what? First, which is horizontal, and the second, which is vertical, and the third, which is what? The blur, and the last one is the color. Because the last time I told you, we have what? We have the minimum values that we have is what? The horizontal and the vertical. But the others, we can add them later. So now we can add maybe 2 pixels for the horizontal, 2 pixels
Mm.
for the vertical, right? And then if you want to have a blur, you can say we want 5 pixels for the blur. You see it is blur. And then we can add the color you want. You can say we
Mm.
want to add maybe color like blue, right? So we see that we had to achieve something like this, right?
Mm.
So that is what they do here, but DS is very light. You see, it is very light. So sometimes you look at it as if you cannot even see it. So you can just do the same thing and say, maybe I want 1. Here should be maybe 0.5. You can play along with it and say, maybe this one you want it to be 10. Maybe 10 is bigger. 1 is okay, right? And then the color, you can change the color to maybe this or beige. You can make it beige or something like this. So you see that we achieve similar thing. And when you go to the website, you see that we have something like this, right? Right? So you see that it is
Mm.
simple. Hmm?
Mm.
Okay, but I can see that like the distance is bigger than ours. Maybe I can add that margin, maybe 80. Oh, Yeah, it's okay, right? 60, 60. Okay, can leave it at 60%. Leave it as it is. So you see that you have achieved it. So that is how we design the website, which is what, and we always think about responsiveness. That's why we use the flex. So now, even if you go down and say, I want to make this my website smaller, you see that it still what works very well.
Mm.
You understand? You see that it still works very well. You see that we are in the 857, which is mostly for tablets. You understand?
Mm.
So our weight is like 857. So when you try to also decrease it, you see that it is reducing. So our weight is going down and going down like this, right? So normally, if you want to go inside the tablet, a mobile phone, at the 600, you have achieved this, right? So at 600, when you try to go down more, this one will what will not look nice, right? So our responsiveness will break out. So look at, you see how it is now. So it doesn't look nicer in this way, right? You see how it's done,
Mm.
right? So if we did what we call media query, right? I told you.
Mm. Yeah.
So you have to add the media query and say that when I reach a certain width, like 600 pixels and below, right? This one should change, right? So how can we
Mm.
do that? We can also do similar way. How? So here is the width, which is 600. So although that is how we design the first section and we make sure it is responsive, and then we move and design another section. So we move on like that. So after we fill it, you feel that everything is responsive. But some people will also design everything like this in a desktop this way and design everything. And after that, you will go one by one and add the media queries. You understand? So it's up to you to do whichever one you want, right? So look at when we reach 600, let's make it add the media query. Which are we targeting? The container. And the container is this one, right? So we want to add a media query. We come down here and say at what? At media. We say at media screen, right? And we add our what? Our own values. We can make it okay. Oh, okay. And then we said what? We add our maximum. So now tell me, are we adding a maximum weight or minimum weight based on this? Which one should we add? We are going this
Minimum.
way. Which one are we adding?
Minimum.
Minimum width.
Yeah.
Remember, when we are doing this and doing that, which one is decreasing, which one is increasing?
Mm.
You ask yourself. And I told you that whenever you are looking at it, you do the opposite way. If you are using maximum weight or minimum weight. But if you are using less than or greater than, that one is okay, right? So here, which one are you using? Are you going to use the maximum weight or you are going to use the normal symbol, less than or greater than? Which one?
Maximum.
Hmm?
Maximum.
Okay, maximum. Okay, it means that we are in the number at the volume which is 600 and we are going down, right? So that is maximum weight. So we come here and say max weight, and our maximum is 600 pixels, right? So it means that at 600 pixels, we are adding what? 600 pixels and less, right? That's why we say maximum. At 600 and less. So 600 and below, right? So it means that normally this is our container. which is like this from this 1058. So we are saying that when we are reducing it and it comes down to what? 600, here to be 600, to be 600. Let me just type in here 600. So when it is at 600, we want something to be done. Either we can hide this, right? And then we change this with what? An icon. Right? So that's why normally you see a website, they normally do that. Right? So I can go here. Let me get you an icon. So I can say I want to get an icon and say Google what? Google icons. You have Google icons that we can copy. And then normally when you look at a lot of websites, we have these icons, which we call a menu. This. Have you ever seen this? Right? Menu. You normally see it in website, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me give you a look at my website like this. When I make it smaller, look at normally what is there. Normally when I increase it, what is there? You see all these things are there. So this one is the desktop look, right? But when I reduce it here to 600, what happened? You see that all those links is hidden, and now what is there? This icon, right? So it's as if we've pushed or we put all these things inside this icon. So now if I click this, I can now see those icons that is there, right? So that's the responsive design that we are talking about. If you are increasing it, that what link will appear at some point, you see, right? So that's normally the same thing that we want to achieve here. When we are here, we don't want to see these things. I want to what? Use this icon. So you can copy this icon. It has different this thing. You can copy it as SVG or you can make it as PNG, depending on whichever you want. You understand? So we can just say we can, okay, let me just download it as PNG so that we use it as a normal picture, right? So you can just say menu, and then I'll go to my website, business landing page, and I put it there. So if I want to create a folder, I can create folder here and just write the name, maybe images, as I told you last time, so that this one will be inside the image, right? So now when I go to my project, I have something we call images, right? So inside the image, now I can see that icon. You see it is here, very small. You see it is, right? So I can change this menu, right? So now where can I put it? I can use it as an image, right? Here is what we have now, right? And here I can add it below, right? I can add it below as an image. You can see img and then add it, which is inside the image and what menu. So I can write image and what menu. So what happened? You see it is here, right? So now you can see that you didn't even do anything, but the structure, the layout looks very nice. Because of what? Because the container, you already set everything to space between, and then you set alignment to the center. So when you added the new element, which are now, we have now 3 children inside the container now, they still follow the same layout. You see this space between, right? So you see that thing is still there, but it doesn't change any, the layout doesn't change. It's still following the same center. So that's why using that flex is very important. So now since we are now having this, you see it is here. Maybe I can give it a color or something like that. But for now, let's leave it like that. Since we have something like this, now we want to hide this, right? When we are cis-ended, right? So how can we do that? We already have this to be inside its own container, which is nav, and we name it as nav links, right? So it means that you can go here and say at media maximum weight, we are targeting what? This nav, we call it is here, this. Either we can say nav or we can say nav length because they are all targeting the same thing. You can say dot nav in what? We say, so how can I hide it? How can I hide it? If you could remember, we use something we call display, right? We had display none and display block. When I say display none, it means hide it. When I say display block, it means show it, right? So here I say display and I say none. It means that I'm saying none, this nav links, this nav links, this nav link at 600, at maximum 600 pixels and below, this nav link should be hidden. It shouldn't display, right? So when I squeeze this and squeeze it, you see that it is gone, right? You see that it is gone now. But when I try to increase it more than 600, it appears, right? But when I'm going down to 600 and below, you see that it is hidden. So now you have responsive design. Now you can have a lot of space to even go down to a what? A mobile device view. You understand now? So that's what we normally call responsive design, right? So you see that it is good. So that's why media query is also important. You see, it's hidden, 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 right? So, but why is it that I don't want this to, right? So I can do the opposite thing that I did with this, right? So how can I do that too? I can also add the same media query, right? I can copy this, come down. But this time, since this one I was what decreasing, but this I want to increase, right? So I'll say minimum, right? Right? I say minimum. And what am I targeting? What do I want to hide? This image, right? I want to hide this, right? Which is this one. I want to hide it. So I can just either give it a class or I can just use the name as this img. But let's give it a class and say it menu, right? So I can come here and copy this menu and come to my CSS. Instead of dot nav link, I can say dot menu. So now this one, when it is above 600, right? When it's above 600 or 600 and above, it is going to hide itself. So the same way I did this, I did this same way, but in an opposite way, right? So let's look at what happened. So you see that it is gone, right? It means that it is above 600. That's why it is gone. But when I reduce it to 600, this one will hide and the small icon will appear. Let's see, right? I understand. So that's how we do to achieve this responsive design. Understand? So this is the simplest way you can understand these designing principles. Understand? So that is why media query is also very important. So you see, with the effect of this, we achieve something simple. So even if you want to,
No, I'm not sure.
yeah, okay. Even if here you want to change something, you can even add anything to it, right? Because here is this one is affecting the nav links, which is this one, this. You understand? So even if you want to affect these things and increase the font, because when it was very small, when it's small like this, you can add another media query and say when it is maybe 661 or 700, you want this what this to bigger, right? You can also do that. You can also target this logo. So we see that the logo remains the same, it doesn't change, right? You see it is still big, right? It is still bigger. So if you think that the logo look very bigger, you want it to be smaller, you can decide, ask yourself at which width, at what width do I want the logo to have to be smaller. So you can decide and say, okay, normally at 320 pixels is normally for the mobile phones. So you can say, oh, this one looks bigger, so let me decrease it. So we can target the same thing and say, come here, add the same media query, copy this, paste it, and ask yourself, are we increasing or decreasing? You understand? You can ask yourself the same thing and say, at maximum, meaning at that values and it below, and you can say you want it at 320 pixels. You want to affect what the H1. The H1 is the what? The logo name, right? The H1, this is the logo. H1, I want the H1 to have what? Instead of display none, I don't want that display none. I want to have different font size, and the font size should be smaller. Maybe you can try it and see, maybe I want you to have 20 pixels. And we look at it and try and see. At 320. So let's see, you see the font is bigger. So let's see when we go down there at 320. You see that the font becomes smaller. Look,
Yeah.
you see? So when you come down, the font becomes smaller, right? So you see that when you are below 320 pixels, you want your font size to be smaller. You can even add the color. You see, when I want the color of the font to be maybe blue. So when you come, you see that the color is blue. But when you increase, the color is black. Right? Now when you decrease and come to smaller, the color is blue. You understand? So it's the same thing. You see everything look nice. Right? So that is all what I wanted to show you, because I think we cannot just say that we want to design all of this. Understand? So with that same mindset, or with that same knowledge, you can design the same thing. This one is not something difficult. You just need to try it. You understand? This one is not something difficult. How we achieve this? So now this one is also another section, right? So you can just calm down and say we are finished with this, which was here as a header. We finished, and we create another section. Let's say we come down here and create section. And inside the section, what do they have? A big image, right? So we first ask ourselves, this is just a background image that we can also add, but we have something in it. First of all, we have we have this as a text. or header. This we have a line, we have another text, we have a button. It's simple. We can just go 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 elements, right? So we come down and say, yeah, since we have 4 elements, the first one is, we can say it is H2, right? What do we have? We are Claymore. So we can write, we are Claymore, right? And dot. And the second one is horizontal. Horizontal line is there. The third one is what? Another word, paragraph. We can say paragraph, and we add anything from professionals. Professionals, what? Professionals in the creative industry. In the creative industry, right? So similar way, and then we add button, and we add what is there? Learn more. Learn more. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This text, paragraph, line, and this, right? So we can decide what to apply each and every one a CSS. But then since it is in a container and this one is in the center, we can use the same thing. This section, we can come in and say section. We go back to our this and come in and say, we comment here and say section. So we know that this CSS is only for the section. Then we put the section and we say display flex. So now you see that they are displaying in the flex way. Now we ask ourselves, how do they arrange in this way? Right? How do they arrange in this way? So now we change what? The direction, right? So we say the direction. Now the direction normally by default it is horizontal. But we say flex direction. And now it is column, right? Now it is column. It's not row now. It is column, right? Then we want them to be in the middle, right? Now we bring our just file content. We say center, right? Align items. No, now we can say, okay, since we are in a column, we are not in a horizontal now. We are now in a vertical way. This. So we use align items. We can say what? Center, right? So what happened? You see that everything came in the middle. So we have achieved something like this. We just need to give separate them. We also add the same thing. So what can we add? They are closer to each other. So if we add padding, it's okay. So we can just padding and say maybe 20 pixels. Because they are in the container, if you add padding, it will affect what? The container itself. But since we are not looking at the container, we are all going to look at each and every word element. But for now, we can just look at this, right? Gap, right? Maybe 20 pixels. You see we have a gap from each of them, right? Maybe, yes. Then we can add what? Margin what? We can add margin top, or we can just say margin and we add what? Top and down, we can add something like 20, maybe 5%, right? 5% might be okay. Or maybe if you think it is smaller, you can say 20, right? You have 20 margin for all sides, right? Because they are just arranged in the middle, right? So we can target each one. After they are arranged in the middle, now we can target each and every one. We target this, change the font, we target this, and then we target that line, that horizontal line too. We can target also, right? So that is the same way we try to design these things. So it's not something difficult. Understand? So you see that we have something like this. And this one is bigger. So we can just even decrease this to 10. Look at it and so, okay, now it's look good. So now we can just have to change the font size and this, right? So font size, we look at font size. How much is the font size? H2, we come here and say, oh, H2, the font size, we give it how much? 20 pixels, it's smaller. We try 40 pixels, it's okay, right? We finish, we come to this, maybe it's P, which is paragraph, and add how many font size? 18 pixels, it's okay, right? We come to this button, we say button, what do you need? Margin, right? A padding, we add padding to all sides, maybe top and down, we can see 10 pixels, right? Left and right, we can see 15 pixels. Maybe you can add border radius. If they don't have it, you can move it like this. They have border radius. We can also say border radius 10 pixels, right? We can remove the border and we say we don't want border, we want border to be none. And then we can add background color, which is black. And then the color of it is white, right? And then we can change the font size, and give it maybe 18 pixels, right? So you see that we are moving, right? Are you following?
Yeah.
So you see that we are moving. We've achieved something like this. Look at what they did. The same thing. We are achieving something like this, right? So maybe I don't think there is the line is there. The horizontal line, why is not showing? I don't know. But we can just target it and look at the horizontal line. Say HR is the horizontal line and say the width of it. Maybe we can give it maybe 10 pixels. And let me see if I don't know why it's not showing. Color is black. You see it is there, very small. You can just add the width, the height of it to be also 10. No, it's bigger. Maybe I can add the border of it. I'll add border to maybe no, come on, width. That width is 50, you see? And then maybe I can give it a border, right? 2 pixels, solid, and then it's okay. You see that? So what else do we need? The background, this background. We just need this background alone. Maybe you see this, there's hover effect, right? There's hover effect to the button. So I come to the button, I copy the same button here, the same button, and I give it pseudo class, which is hover. We did that, hover. And then we said, when we hover onto it, what do you want? When I hover here, you see the color changes to maybe, let's say, pink. So I said background color will change to pink. And then what again is the color? Color should be black. So color is black, right? And then the radius, border radius here, I think it should be like 25 like this. And then I will increase this to 20, right? Okay, so we achieve something like this. When you come here, you see, right? You see how it is? But then they have what we added here as what? As transition, right? You say transition. And what are you looking at? The background, right? Background color. Background color, right? And then what do you want it to be? 2 seconds. right? So when I come here, you see what's happening? Slow, right? Maybe 1 second or maybe 0.5. 1 second is okay, right? 1 second, maybe 0.5, 0.5 seconds, right? The background color, 0.5 seconds, right? So I can increase this to 30, 30, right? So you see that we achieve something simple, you see, right? Are you following?
Yeah.
So now the last one is just to add the background, right? This is the background,
Hey,
what?
the
This is
background,
the
can we
background.
leave it for the next section?
No, it's not something, I just want to add it and remove. We have just finished. Okay,
Okay.
hello? So it's not
Yeah, hello.
something difficult. It's just we've already added it. I'm just trying to tell you that, for instance, which is the background. We are just target this a section, right? So the section is the one which is holding the background. The way the section is the section. So we just need to add it. What do you have? You can see background color. Either we add background image, right? We can copy image from somewhere and put it there, right? We can use the linear gradients that we did, right? Add linear gradients and add color that we want. You understand? So you can just say, let me see, you can just add the image. You can add an image from somewhere. Go online and search for image. Let me see if, okay, this one is, okay, you can copy image like this. Maybe, because when we see the image is inside, you understand? So you can copy the same image and see background image. We have something like this just to mimic something like this. You can copy this, right? Copy this image. We come here and see that we have a background image, which is this. So we put it inside our, what is the image, which is just img, and put it here. And this now you see it is here, right? And look at this, this what they have, right? So here we can do the same thing. We added the image, and now we have to make the image have a margin. Margin is 10. Ah, okay, yeah, I made a mistake here. Okay, I made a mistake here. Should pardon. You can say 10, maybe 10%, right? You see our padding is 10% here, right? But then this is top and down, and left and right should be, left and right can be, you come here, let's say margin, top and down should be 0, but left and right should be maybe 20%, right? You see that we achieve something like this. Or maybe if it is 2, maybe I can just see 10% is okay, right? Right. You see that now we don't have to worry about anything. We've designed ours in a similar way. The way you look at there, and then ours, the same thing. We just need to change the background or maybe to copy their own background. But you see that you also have your own design. So you design all the sections again and then move. So it's not something difficult. You just need to apply each and everything that we've learned. You understand? Everything that you learn, if you apply them correctly, you see that everything works perfectly. So even when I use pesticide, look at the design. It arranged nice. You see this nice, this nice, this nice. You see that everything is perfect. So when I want to look at the responsiveness, you see that it is still working, even though I didn't add anything for the second section, but it still work nice. You see. So even though now you don't need to even touch anything for the responsiveness for this section. You understand? You see, it works very fine, even for the mobile phone. So that is what we normally do. So as your assignment, just go and then look at it and try to design. Since I've already designed this, you can also do the same thing, but try as much as possible to continue and design something like this. This, because if you design this, it's the same thing. Just copy and paste this things. Just change the arrangement. You understand in this. So it means that if you're able to design one of it, you can just change the arrangement. This one change the arrangement, and this one is the same. So just go and try whatever you can do in this. Try and do a good job, and then I'll see what you can be able to do. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just sending you this link, copy it, and then try as much as possible to do something similar like this. Let's try your best. Let me send you the link. Where is your chat? Okay, copy there. Copy the link and save it somewhere. Okay.
Okay.
Have you copied the link?
Let me check. Yeah.
Right? Or should I send it to you on WhatsApp again?
I
Or is
copied the
it?
link.
All right, no problem. Okay, then I think I'll leave it for you to go and then try it. And then I will meet you on Monday because we still have this short lesson, and these are not something difficult. There's just some explanation that I need to do, and this, and then so this is just the only important thing that we cover. And then I think maybe if I have some CSS property, the course. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll see you on Monday.
Okay, inshallah. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.